So I love teaching ELA for the simple fact that you can role play with the stories that you read in the classroom. And that's my favorite part about teaching ELA. And role playing is fun, but it's also another way to bump up that rigor. Bump up that rigor. Okay, so back to the lesson of citing evidence. Having the students engage in what I mentioned before in a flash read and the interval reading took about 2 days to complete the Telltale Heart. But it was worth it because the students really grasped the information and everybody knew what was going on and what was occurring in the story. Students were motivated by this challenge. And as I mentioned before, because I extended the accountability and I helped them navigate their way through the challenge, it wasn't like just pulling teeth, so to speak. And I was so proud of them, and I was proud of myself because I feel like I did something right. You know, as a teacher, you feel like you do so much wrong, but this day, I felt like I was really doing something right because my students were actually performing to standard, and that was very important to me. So, by day 3, it was time to compile the evidence and conduct our mock trial, which was my favorite part of the lesson, and it was my students' favorite part of the lesson as well. So every student had a role in deciding the fate of the suspect. So for time management purposes and also to close that millimeter where students can wiggle in and hijack your lesson, I pre-selected the groups for the mock trial. So 12 students I picked to be jurors, and their job was to decide if the prosecution or the defense had the best argument. Then there was the defense team, which was comprised of 5 students. Now, depending on your classroom size, you may give or take a few students in the group. The defense's job was to compile the evidence from their annotated story and come up with the best arguments in support of the criminally insane defense. Then there was the prosecution team, and that was also comprised of 5 students. And like I said, you can give or take depending on your classroom size. Their job was to use the same information that we went over in class to pull out the best evidence to support that the suspect had criminal intent and deserved first-degree murder and the consequences that went along with that. So, while the defense and the prosecution teams were working on their pitch, the jury was working to make a prediction. So they would weigh the information that they have collected as far as criminal insanity or first-degree murder. And they would come together and work together in a group to decide a prediction, to make a prediction concerning how the trial would end up going. I distributed the oversized post-it sheets so that students would have a workspace, and this would be the same post-it sheet that they would present during the trial. When I conducted the trial, we were on block schedule, so I was able to go through the whole trial process in one class period. So maybe you're not on block schedule and you may have to divide the trial up, have one day where the students are just planning what they're going to present in the mock trial, and the next day is actual trial. But I was fortunate enough to run through the whole thing on a block schedule. So grades for the mock trial was based on the quality of information presented on their poster, as well as the peer rubric that I blogged about in blog 4. So, that's a resource you can look back at. Moving forward, so after I allowed each group time to work on their presentations, it was trial time. And I was the judge. So, I told you I love role playing in the classroom. So we flipped a coin to see which team would present first, the defense or the prosecution. One team member from each group would present the argument, and they would reference the ideas that they had put on their poster. Each team had 15 minutes to present, and after both sides presented, the jury was given 10 minutes to deliberate. And the outcome ultimately was also written on the jurors' poster as well. And they presented their process for coming up with the prediction, and basically, was the prediction correct? What was the outcome of this court scene? So, this was the funny part, like where it got crazy. And it was okay because it was a joyful celebration. Now, I'm not the type of teacher that I don't want students to celebrate or be excited, but it needs to be in good context. So, just a disclaimer. When the verdict was read, the class went bananas. They were like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And it was so much excitement and it was so much joy. And even I was like thrown by what the class had decided. And it was fun because, as you have different class periods, every class period had something different and brought out, different points, and the outcomes were different. And so I was able to put the posters on the wall, and the students could compare the verdict for each class period. And it was so much fun. And my kids, they were clapping and stomping and yelling a little bit, and I'm like I really had to be the judge then, and I was like, order in the court. But it was crazy. And anyway, it was very enjoyable, to say the least. So the lesson basically closed out with the peer rubric. So everybody had to evaluate their team members within the group based on their input. Did they help at all? I mean, were they cooperative? Were they argumentative amongst the collaborators in the group? And all the things that are mentioned on that peer rubric, which I will provide a link for in this blog as well. So, because there was so much disagreement and pandemonium in the classroom, I said, okay, so since everyone does not agree with the outcome, you're going to write a 5-paragraph argumentative essay about why you agree or disagree with the verdict. So the rest of the week, day 4 and day 5 were what I call write days. And write days are just that, days to write. And it was amazing that my students were so excited about writing because they were involved in the process. Their voice was heard. Everyone had an opportunity to participate, and everybody's input mattered. So they were ready to write. Day 4 was rough draft day. Day 5 was final draft day. And on the right days, I would basically just open the lesson by recapping what we already talked about, pulling out the different pieces of evidence that could be used in their essays, and reiterating the directions about what they were supposed to do. I would close out the lesson by just basically talking about what other students had written and allowing an opportunity for them to ask questions and share their information. So it was collaborative learning on a whole group instruction kind of level. And this is when I realized what my favorite classroom noise is. Teachers, do you have a favorite classroom noise? Because if you don't, you should. But I'm going to tell you what mine is. Mine was hearing those pencils and pens just scratch across that paper. And it was so much rigor and so much intensity. And I'm like, oh, I know these essays are going to be so good. And I was amped up and excited. And I had to contain myself as I just observed them write and be so passionate, and I can see the wheels turning in their heads, and I was just a proud teacher, and I love that. That's my favorite sound. So you can tell me in your comments what your favorite classroom noise is. When you think about it, you can post it. Okay, so if a student finished early, of course, that's where the goals in the cereal box came in. If you watched the last blog, it's a lot of good information there to use about extended learning and project-based learning and how you can keep your students going, without having to recreate a new task for them to do. But I'm that teacher now that my kids weren't going to have any free time. I tried to make it a point that they did not. So when they thought that they were finished their essay, I say, let me see it, let me read. And I would give them feedback and I'd say, fix this, fix that, go back. And so, I would keep helping them revise it and giving them more to do to perfect their essay. And I would do it until they're like, Miss Richardson, you know what? You've given this paper back to me like 5 times and I'm over it. And I'll be like, okay, now you can go work on your goals in a cereal box project or something like that. But I pushed until they had reached their limit. Also, I had a student call me out and say, Miss Richardson, you had us reading the same story for a whole week, Miss Richardson. And we read it 5 or 6 times. And I was like, yep, I know. I meant to do that. That's what I was trying to do. So that's where I was talking about the finesse as well. I tricked them into learning and they weren't too mad about it. So if you want the full instructions on how to implement this in your classroom, of course, click the link down below and there are free teacher resources there for you. Come back next week for Technology and Common Core Standards on next Sunday. Thank you for watching and I look forward to chatting with you again. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you. Talk to you later.